Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have my panel of real estate experts in Northern Virginia. All three of these folks are very successful realtors, been doing it a long time, all went to high school in Northern Virginia. I have with me today Kathy Hassett, my old pal from Oakview Elementary School. She ended up going to Lake Braddock, and she's based, I believe, in Old Town, Kathy.
Yeah.
Does a lot of work. She's like me, she's a former attorney. You're probably still an attorney. And she uses those attorney skills in negotiation and represent her clients. She's an NBAR Platinum Top Producer, lots of other awards. I've seen her announcements on the her listings on social media. Does a great job. Does it in a very humble way, which is interesting. I like your approach. So anyway, Kathy, good to see you again. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thanks, Julian, for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, of course. So, and then I got my old pal, Greg Wells, who I reminded him last time was quite a basketball player when I coached him in the 8th grade All-Star game at Robinson. Greg was a Mason soccer player, but he's been doing this a long time. Greg and I aren't old, but somehow he's been doing this for 28 years. He was part of the group that helped sell Toll Brothers in the Belmont Country Club development, and he's just done unbelievable there. He's in the Remax Hall of Fame. And also top 100 teams, the Greg Wells team. Greg, good to see you again. Thanks for doing this.
Julian, my pleasure. Nice to see you guys too.
Yeah. So, and then I got my old pal, Pete Knapp. Pete, I've worked together with Pete on some things. He's a great dude. He's also a former law firm veteran like us. Pete got into the game, I guess you could say relatively late, but now it's been 2006. So it's been 18 years now. 600 homes sold, $300 million. This might be old stats, but I know now he's with Real Broker, which is new since the last time we talked. That's kind of exciting news. Pete's also my neighbor in Lansdowne. So Pete, thanks for doing this. Good to see you again.
Thanks for having me, and nice to see you all.
Yeah. Well, guys, last time we talked, you may remember Mike Grogan, who was on, he mentioned late in the call that there was this big decision going to come out. It's going to change the world. And when he said it, I had no idea what he was talking about. But recently, I guess there was a settlement where it's going to be harder. I guess parties sold, not claiming they didn't know that they had to pay the brokerage fees. And there was a large settlement where now it looks like it's going to have to be more explicit who the buyer's agent represents. And it's going to be harder for that. I guess in the past, it was just assumed that the seller would pay that out of the proceeds, but now it's going to be tougher to do that. And I've been reading on social media that it's caused quite a storm, and people are really concerned about how going forward that's going to work. Guys, did I explain that correctly, or did I completely butcher that?
Julian, it's there's a lot of information out there. People have different takes on this. But the truth is those settlements need to be approved by the courts, which, may take a while to happen. And the other thing to remember that's important is that a couple of the components of the settlement were already in place, especially in Virginia. Commissions have always been negotiable. It's part of the listing agreement. We fill in what our, compensation or commission is going to be. It's been that way. So that's not really new. There's also a requirement in the settlement for a buyer-broker agreement to be signed. And this is law in Virginia right now, so that's not new either. What is new is that the commission or compensation that the seller agrees to pay can be split, or part of it go towards the buyer's agent. And that's decided at the time that the listing agreement is signed. But going forward, according to the settlement, that can no longer be published on the MLS. So that is a change in Virginia. Come July of this year, the MLS will no longer publish what's known as the co-op commission, the commission for the buyer's agent. It doesn't mean that it can't be there or that it won't be offered. It just won't be published. We'll have to find out what that is in a different way. So,
okay, that's a more positive take on this than I've been seeing online, which is good. Greg, you and Pete, you have anything to add at this point, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kathy described it very well, and it is going to be a change. We're going to have to see this play out to see, really how, how big of a change it is or is not. It will be a little bit tricky trying to navigate it at the beginning. A seller offered co-op commission, as Kathy said, that field will no longer exist in the MLS. But if the seller is willing to, help the buyer pay their agent, which is technically how the language has been written for many, many years. But in the buyer agent agreement, it says that the buyer is responsible to pay their agent, but the buyer is also able to accept compensation if it's being offered by the seller, which has always been historically the case. Going forward, that still could be the case. That information could be negotiated or discussed offline. It just can't be public. A seller could also list a contribution to the buyer that the buyer could then use to pay their agent. So instead of a co-op commission being listed in the MLS, a seller could agree to offer a buyer either a dollar amount or a percentage that they could use in any which way they decide. So if the buyer wants to use that seller contribution to pay their agent, fine. So we'll see how this works out. There's going to be some workarounds, and there's going to be some adjustments. But I think at the end of the day, buyers and sellers still, the percentages show us, still very much want representation and don't want to go this alone. This is the biggest financial decision that people make, in their lives in most cases. And, and they want an expert in their court.
Yeah.
I think that I wish Kathy did the reporting on this instead of most of the major media outlets, because I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges all three of us have faced, is people asking us generally about it. And the headline reads, "This is the end of the 6% commission, and this is this is that." And I think both Kathy and Greg have done a good job of explaining that not really that much has changed. But I think what we're going to have to deal with is the perception of people about it. Because one thing that struck me is a lot of people kind of saying solutions to things, and, oh, this is going to breed discount buyer's agents for a flat fee. And that's something that frankly just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because as they will probably relate with, if you're helping someone buy a house, that's one of the most uncertain things a realtor goes into, because you could show them 5 houses, you could show them 55 houses, and I just have a hard time, but that's one of the sort of things that people say are coming, because I don't think a flat fee is going to work there, because agents, and my biggest concern about it, frankly, is for the consumer. Buyer's agents are incredibly important, as are listing agents, but like Greg said, it's the biggest financial decision of their lives. Everyone still needs representation. And I hope that we can sort of secure that being the case moving forward. And I think people that have been in the industry a while will adjust.
Yeah. Well, am I reading it right in that things may not change that much for if you have a lot of listings and you're an experienced realtor, things won't change all that much, except for the fact there is a way, if this is not done correctly, that certain buyers won't get the information like they would have before. From the buyer's side, a lot of people might try to go on their own, but that's not going to happen on the seller side. But the buyer still has incentive the seller still has incentive to get buyer commissions, because more buyers will see their house if they offer that. Is that correct? So it is going to affect sellers, but not as much as the buyer agents.
100%, Julian. You know, I did get the phone call from a listing that's going to come on the market in May. And the seller said, why should I pay the buyer's agent's commission? Why should I do that? And I explained to him, just as you just articulated, that, you know, it's my job to, number one, make his house look the best it possibly can for the market. And two, get the highest number, the biggest pool of buyers, qualified buyers, in to see that house. That is, you know, paramount. So when you decide that you don't want to offer buyer's agent commission split, that might cut back on that pool of buyers. First-time home buyers, sometimes they're going to the very penny to get to close the closing table. Down payment, settlement costs, you know, and everything else involved in moving. So if you, on top of that, you're asking the buyer to also pay the compensation to their agent, that just might take them out completely of being able to purchase a home at that time. There's also a little problem with VA buyers, because by law, they cannot pay a real estate agent's commission. So if the seller's not paying it and the VA loan purchaser is not unable to pay that by law, that takes them out. Like, are those buyers going to go see that house when they know that they, you know, it's just a very difficult situation there? So that is a problem. And the sellers, I think, when you start to explain it in those terms, I think they start to understand the value of it, being, you know, still willing to take the commission that they're offering and have some of that go towards the buyer's agent. It behooves them, it benefits them, because they'll get a larger buyer pool into their home.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There seems to be a certain cynicism towards realtors. And the reason why I say that is that you guys know the value that you bring because you do this often enough where it's easy to see. I just went through a transaction, and as I explained in the last one, the real estate business had changed so much. I couldn't imagine going into this on either side without having representation, because the things that just changed. It's not something you do all the time. So when you come back in, you'd like someone to help you navigate and make sure you're in the right house as well you sell your house. But I've been reading somewhere that, you know, the DOJ might even get involved about collusion. And the thing that bothered me about that is it's not collusion if agents understand the importance of both sides having representation. There's no collusion about that if you guys understand the value of having representation on both sides. So that, I just feel like there's a certain cynicism out there about realtors. My guess is you guys are probably happy that this is happening, you know, probably closer to the end of your career than the beginning, just because things were changing so quickly.
Well, I think I've always experienced, you know, heard people with a little bit of cynicism about us. And I've always told people, in my opinion, not just because I'm a realtor, but you can't you can't express the value enough of a full-time realtor who is always looking out for your needs, and who's just working 24/7 and representing you as if it was their money, you know. And I think that, unfortunately, sometimes people look at us in a negative way, and they don't see, I mean, Kathy, Greg, you'll say, they don't see all the behind the scenes work we do. And unfortunately, I think if we weren't there, I think a lot of people joked, well, in the next month, let's take realtors out of it and let's see what happens with all the transactions.
Mhm.
Because I think that you need professionals on both sides guiding their clients to get them to the finish line. I mean, Julian, like in your case, when I was lucky enough to represent you, the realtors are doing this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We found a house because I just happened to put it out to other realtors that I was looking for a house, and we got one that didn't go on the market, you know. And if you don't have that, I think the whole structure of the transaction and the overall buyer and seller experience is going to be greatly diminished.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And it looks like, as Kathy was saying, you're already seeing signs of it. Did you guys, anything else about how things have changed a little bit already, or is that enough on this topic?
I don't think that, I mean, Kathy, you made a good point. I've gotten questions about it, but it still hasn't been fully approved, you know? So it has to get fully approved for us to see it, but, I haven't seen, I've been asked a lot of questions, but nothing in practice yet.
How about you, Greg? You really?
I don't think I've got anything additional to add. I think, we just need to, continue to, have discussions with our, with our clients and try to educate them on, the backstory and the reality of, what's coming down the pike and the fact that, we don't really know how this is going to play out. Everybody's making sort of assumptions right now, but, and there are, guidelines that probably will, be enacted here shortly. But, until they are, I don't think I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it.
Yeah. Well, let's get to brighter things, at least for any seller going on the market now. And it is the inventory. Last year we talked, obviously the inventory seemed to be almost at I don't know, an all-time low, but there wasn't many properties on the market. I know Lansdowne has a population 12,000. There's one house on the market right now. There's a couple over 55s on the market that are new construction, but there's one house for 12,000, population 12,000 community. I think we all probably assumed that things would get moving a little bit because there was rumors of interest rates going to drop this year. So I think people assumed inventory would probably respond this year, but so far it looks like it looks a lot like last year. What do you guys think?
So many
I
people.
agree.
Oh, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I agree. I think out here in Loudoun County for sure. And I think Kathy would probably agree that, as you move in towards the city, the scarcity of land is even more so, and builders just don't have a lot to work with, and that lost inventory from new construction is something that in the last 10 years nationwide has been a big problem. Some places more so than others. There are some markets that I've heard, some Florida markets where there's a lot of new construction going on. Maybe some Texas markets where there's some new construction going on. But here in Northern Virginia, we're just we're really strapped on new construction, and that lack of inventory really plays into things. Especially in single family homes. I mean, try to find new construction single family right now is nearly impossible. What builders are building are condos and townhomes, but you try to find single family and it's nearly impossible. Having said that, I've sensed a little bit of loosening, but we're so far out of balance that even a little bit of loosening just doesn't really feel like much. I think there are people out there that have been sitting on the fence. These are sellers that have wanted to move for a number of years. And, as agents, as the prices were going up so quickly, we would hear this all the time, hey, I'd love to take advantage of the prices right now as a seller, but where would I go? Because everything else is so expensive. And, to sell your home that you've lived in for, 10, 15, 20 years in some cases, that you bought at a fraction of what they are selling for today, it just didn't add up. And then the rates on top of that. But what I'm sensing now is that, some people, it's typically like the baby boomer generation, they're just getting to the point where they're like, hey, look, I'm not getting any younger. I want to do this, yeah, it might not make sense in some ways, but you know what, I'm just going to do this because I want to, move to the beach. I want to move to the mountains. I want to move somewhere less expensive and, and start the next chapter of my life. Maybe, that chapter is retirement. And so I'm sensing a little bit of that out there, and definitely some of my inventory, some of my listings fit that bill.
Well, it's only a couple of years of pain too, because if you're selling now, you're going to sell quickly, and you might get a really good price, even though interest rates are high. And then, you can always hope to refi on the other side. So even, making that decision, it's not like paying forever. It's probably just going to be a temporary thing, a year or two, hopefully, right? But
Yeah, on the rate side of things, yeah, for sure.
And Greg
And a
makes a
lot,
great
and,
point.
and a lot of those people, a lot of those people have so much equity built up in their homes that they're moving, massive amounts of equity into their next home. So mortgages are not as important to some of those people. In fact, some of those people are paying cash for their retirement home or financing very little.
yeah. Pete, you want to jump in here?
Oh no, Greg just made a great point about the maybe retirement. There has to be just the driving factor right now to make someone move. It's not your normal, okay, I've lived in a townhouse, now I'm going to move up. And like he's saying, that's what might be loosening it a little bit, where so many people are saying, okay, I want to reap the benefits of how much my home has gone up and maybe a little more inventory. But unfortunately, with the whole picture, so many people are sitting on 2.5 to 3.5% mortgages that it's hard to see the big picture. And they're sitting there and they bought a place for 6. And if they're gonna, it's gone up to 9, but if they're gonna move and be even, then the places they're looking at are 5 or 6. They almost have to like downsize their house in order to break even in terms of what they're paying. And I think that over time, I think those driving factors that Greg mentioned, that's what's going to keep loosening things. And then hopefully it'll be sort of equated by rates going down a bit.
Yeah. Kathy, do you want to jump in about
Yeah.
people finally making the jump, or what you're seeing in terms of inventory?
Yeah, I did take a peek at the numbers that Bright MLS puts out as far as inventory year over year. So in Fairfax County in March, from March 23 to the year March 24, new listings dropped 13.8%.
Wow.
So down 13.8% fewer listings came on the market in the month of March of 24 than it did a year before.
Wow.
So inventory is very tight. And people do have to have, a life change really usually to force them to put their house on the market and move. Divorces, job change, sometimes even, more children, and they just really need to get a bigger house. But the inventory is very tight, which makes it just so challenging for the buyers. My last sale in February was a sight unseen sale. So my purchaser bought a house. She had to move here because of her job. She'd never stepped foot in that house. I never stepped foot in the house before buying it, but we had to do that because it was going to go to somebody else if we didn't. And it turned out a happy ending. She's my friend, and she's been my friend for a long time, and we're still friends. So she's happy with what she got. But that is the extremes that I'm seeing in the marketplace for people, because inventory is so extremely low for people to get a house that they really want to get.
I'll give you a real-time example that backs that up. Today, there was a home in Ashburn that came on for around 900, and we offered 75 above list price with an offer deadline, and they're going to counter us. And the thing is, the agent was explaining it to me, and he did a great job where he just said they think they can get in a bidding war if they take it through the weekend, and so, which I understand. I mean, it's a risk, but that's incredible, to go in and with limited contingencies too. And it is a testament to just and also just that buyers agents, it's hard, as Kathy, I'm sure the example you're given, it's hard to tell people, hey, this is what you have to do, because we're all worried. Are we are we giving them the best advice we can? But we have to tell them, hey, this is what it's going to take to get the home. But also, I feel secure that with the rate situation, it's still going to be low inventory for the near future as well. So even just getting the house is an advantage, because I feel like in 2 or 3 months, they're probably already going to have equity.
I'll jump in with that because the other stat that I looked up was the change in median sale price, which for Fairfax County year over year for the month of March went up 11.8% appreciation year over year. So yes, supply and demand, the basic economic, function applies. That prices are going up when supply is low.
Is
And I
11% a lot more than usual, Kathy? What would you usually see in year to year?
So an average year, to my knowledge, was usually, I believe, about 6% appreciation year over year. So and this was 11.8, so double, basically double what a normal year would be in Northern Virginia. I'm looking just at Fairfax County. I have a stat for Loudoun County. That median sale price went up 4.2 year over year. So it's be different, but it's pretty intense. And I do want to say one thing. My friend wanted to do that sight unseen, and I told her, no, we're not doing that. And then we got the word, well, got another offer in hand, and we had to jump on it. So I always tell my buyers, getting to a price is art and science. We can look at the market in that area. We can see what other homes have sold for, but it's art and science together. And they have to be willing to pay and do what they can do if they really want that house. It depends on how much they want the house. So that's where, the 75,000 escalation, and then they're countering that, because if those folks have it in their heart that they want that house, they'll go up a little bit. And that's what we're seeing in the marketplace at this point.
Yeah. And it's also, you have to really pay attention in real time to what's happening, because we had to base our offer on something that happened, 4 days ago, because we saw a place that we, calling around, you can usually get from agents what places, what they got for a place. And we just happened to sort of piggyback off one that had 8 offers through the weekend, and we knew what that one went for. And you do wonder, when does it stop? Because from a lot, but with that interest rate part of things, it's just, you just got to get your people their house, and I'm glad to hear she's happy with it, because I've done sight unseen too, in the exact same situation where I cautioned them and, told them, but then they wanted it. So
That's a lockdown COVID type of contribution to our market too, right? A lot more sight unseen type purchases.
yeah, that was definitely the case back then.
Is there a chance that it can boomerang, and that it's such a tight market now? When interest rates go down, is there a chance that the market will be flooded with listings, and then it'll be harder to get that price? Or, as Greg said earlier, I think all three of you said it, there's such excess demand, it won't matter. I mean, is there any way the interest rates go down and everyone goes on the market and it gets tougher to sell a house because there's a lot of inventory?
I don't think so, because that would create, it might, but that would create more buyers. Because right now, the lost person in a lot of cases is that move up buyer who bought at 3% and they can't move up right now because they bought and they're in a home. So I think if what you're talking about would happen, I think you would have more people obviously listing, but anyone who's not moving out of the area, they would become, buyers for new listings, and it might even get things a little healthier.
NAR actually just put out numbers that said for every point decrease in interest rates, this is nationwide, NAR, for every point decrease in interest rates, 5 million buyers become qualified for a loan.
That's
So
a great
those are
point.
potential new buyers, nationwide. So you take it for what it is, but that's exactly to Peter's point. It's like, as interest rates drop, the buyer pool increases and you've got more competition there. So my lender kind of says, hey, high interest rates are a buyer's best friend. Like, it's keeping your competition at bay. I guess so, if you can afford it. And there's the old saying, which I was thinking previously, you date the rate, marry the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your house is your house forever, but you date that rate and you change it when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah. Greg, do you want to jump in on this one, or?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, remember before the rates, jumped up on us, we were in a low inventory environment. And that was mostly because prices had gone up so fast to where, people just don't see the rationale in making a move with the prices the way they are. And they continue to go that way. So, I think, I don't think we're going to see a big inventory shift until we see a drop in the market, until we see like prices starting to go down. And then all the people that are like sitting on the fence and are going, oh, wait a second, it's time for me to get out, you know? It's just, and, I don't foresee that happening anytime real soon based on other factors, but I really think that, that's going to be what drives additional supply.
Yeah.
If something, when we get to the point, which, we all know that, real estate has cycled throughout the years. And there's always been, dips in the market. And we're way, way, way past, historically where we should have seen a correction in this market. So sometime we will, who knows when.
Yeah.
But when we do, I think that might be something that triggers people to say, hey, it's time for me to get out, cash out of this thing.
Yeah. Well, Greg mentioned earlier about all the townhouses that are being built. I mean, when my son was home last from school, we were driving around and I said, look, when you see, we're kind of new to Loudon. When we're driving around here, you won't see any new houses being built, but you'll see new condos, new townhouses everywhere you go. And he couldn't believe it. He said, well, why aren't they building new houses? And I think we talked about this earlier. I think it's much more cost effective for builders to put a row of townhouses up sometime. And maybe there's other reasons as well. But what is that going to do to the price of houses, single family houses? I would think, if you have a house, Greg, in Belmont, all the townhouses that are going around, eventually, doesn't it got to help the price of single family homes? Because a lot of folks eventually dream of moving out of the townhouses or out of the condos and into single family homes.
Yeah, I think so. I think, when you look at the prices of these condos and townhomes that are being built, the prices are high, which then, just pushes the single family homes even higher. If you do, like a square footage, comparison, it just continues to push the singles higher. And the fact that they're not building singles really anymore. I mean, it's just so hard to find a brand new single, that in supply and demand world in a single family, is resale only. And there's not many of those out there.
Right. So those got to be worth holding on to because eventually you're going to be able to make a lot of money on them, I would think. Yeah. But
I think it's interesting. I'll just interject here. I think it's interesting in my neck of the woods, Old Town Alexandria. They are converting a lot of former office condos, office space into residential condos now. They knocked down a hotel, put up condos there. So they're fitting in homes wherever they can. And in really hyper local in my area of Alexandria, they are taking the 1950s, 60s larger lots with a small rambler house on it, taking that down and putting up two, smaller lot, single family homes, but, dividing, doing the lot division and putting up two homes. So they're fitting it in. That's how Fairfax County kind of operates though. They fit in houses where they can. I showed a house the other day in Centerville and, there's another house in the backyard with the front of the house facing the backyard because there's a pipe stem. And it's like they find just whatever little piece of land they can and build a house on it. So
there's a beautiful house in my old neighborhood in the Country Club Hills like that. And it was on the market for the longest time. I just loved it. But a friend of mine was looking. I'm like, why don't you buy the house on, I think it was on 35th Street. He says, you're in the backyard. You're actually looking right at the back of another house, and you're sharing their driveway. I can't buy that house, but it did eventually sell, and it's beautiful. Pete, did you want to jump in on townhouse versus house, or?
Yeah, I think Greg brings up a great point that I've noticed. I don't know if you all have too, but the higher end price points, those have become just as competitive. I think that's one little difference between this year as opposed to a couple years ago, where the the value, like Willisford, I mean, also in Belmont and places like that, the values are just skyrocketing, relatively. And I hadn't seen that kind of acceleration in past years. And I think that might be sort of a very quick result of what Greg's talking about, where there's so much townhome and condo inventory coming in new that the value of a detached home, especially a bigger one, is probably gonna go up more than it would have in the past. Definitely. 'Cause there have been a couple times where I've just watched these houses go on the market, and even if you're not buying or listing, we all pay attention to everything that's going on. And you guys can probably relate with, you see one on a Wednesday or a Thursday and you're like, well, that one's not going to get an offer, and then, Sunday Sunday or Monday.
Four offers,
Right,
four.
exactly. Sunday or Monday under contract, then you see what it sold for. You're like, whoa, this is a shift. And I've noticed in the 1, 2, maybe plus range in Loudon, those houses that in the last few years might have sat for a little bit are going pretty darn quickly.
Yeah, we did discuss that last year. I think you guys commented that I think over 1.8 or 2 or so, they were sitting a little bit longer and there was
Yeah.
some buyer remorse
Yeah,
last year.
now I'm seeing those same ones. There was one that came up in a pretty popular development. It was 1525, and I have an out of town buyer. It was just too big for him. I said, well, maybe we'll wait and see if it comes down. It went right away.
Yeah. So I guess that's good news for the market.
Yeah, and for people who have detached homes.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely think that's something we'll see over time.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy mentioned earlier that Fairfax had gone up 11%, and I think Loudon 6%. Now, I think without knowing the stats or the data, I think probably the lockdown, COVID probably helped areas further away from the city. I know in my company, we had IT guys moved to Idaho, other places. A lot of folks moved out away from, there was no need. There was a lot more remote work. So it's a lot less commuting. I moved to Loudon, and I wouldn't have done that if I had to be in the office every day because we're in Roslyn. It's impossible to get to Roslyn every day. Do you think now that things are switching back the other way? If Fairfax now is going back up in relation to Loudon, maybe it's, maybe it went too far, and now maybe it's people are wanting to be close to the city because traffic has returned on the roads for sure.
I think so. I definitely agree with that. Remote work was great for a lot of people, but then their employers realized they were sitting on these gigantic office buildings and that they needed to bring people back to work, and now they are. And commuting is a real thing. I mean, traffic's only getting worse, and people don't want to be that far away. And so I think that's a real. I think that is exactly why Fairfax is driving things up so quickly right now.
Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in, or it's pretty much nailed it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree with
So last year when we moved, we wanted to kind of downsize, but all we really needed was a good school, and we were up for hearing new ideas. And Pete lives in Lansdowne, and he raved about it. And we came across Lansdowne kind of late in our search, and it just kind of happened to work out. And it's amazing here, and I can't believe it's if you look at Arlington, where we live and where we live now, this is such an upper middle class community compared to such a wealthy community that we live. But the lifestyle here is very good. And one thing it makes me think is there's probably a lot of undervalued gems out there, like neighborhoods that people don't consider. I think we get caught up in the name and the city, but also just the neighborhood. And Lansdowne is something that I think is a wonderful place, and I've heard great things about Belmont, Greg, because a lot of the kids that my daughter's friends with live there, and so we've gotten a chance to see Belmont a lot. You took me on a nice tour of the country club there. But are there other gems like that, like when you're taking people on tours of houses and you have a buyer that's kind of open-minded, maybe they're from out of town and don't have these biases against certain things. Do you guys have any neighborhoods that you like to show people that kind of surprises them? And maybe it's just a neighborhood like Belmont that people just haven't considered.
Locally, there's a couple, Kincaid Forest and Beauregard Estates are two of my favorites in Leesburg. that not a lot of people have heard of. They don't have, the huge amenities and things like that. But I think what's ironic about that question is I will circle back to the NAR discussion. That's why a realtor is valuable. You know what I mean? Because like in your case, you had sort of heard from people, but I said, hey, how about here? How about there? And those are two that stick out for me because older homes, more space between them, not a lot of streets where you have a lot of traffic, little stuff like that. And I think in Loudon, as Greg will probably testify too, there are a lot of those. You just sort of have to find them. A lot of sort of little enclaves. And like I live in Lansdowne, I love it. You have Belmont, the Broadlands, sort of Brambleton, bigger, more well-known areas. But I would think one of the great parts about Loudon is that you have a lot of little enclave neighborhoods that are cool as well.
Yeah. Well,
There's
Kathy, I used to love Beverly Hills. We used to live in Fairleigton when we first bought.
I know what that is.
And, yeah, and we used to drive through Beverly Hills. We thought it was like the most amazing little neighborhood. It's different in where you are because Loudon is like more planned communities. It was built kind of on planned communities, whereas Alexandria was kind of built more organically. But what about you? You like to explore with new buyers and show them new things?
Sure. I will say I had some buyers retiring here from Texas. They chose to retire. Most people move out of the Northern Virginia area when they retired. They were coming from Texas. Great. They wanted to buy someplace along Fairfax Station, that type of vibe. And I actually found him a place in Lansdowne. They love it. They loved it. He's a cyclist. They love being out in that part of the Northern Virginia area where there's a lot of just bike trails and it's beautiful. So that's an example of somebody coming from out of town, thinking they have an idea of where they want to go and kind of shifting them, looking at someplace different and it turning out really well. But I also want to say one of the benefits of being kind of hyper local is what we call it. And it sounds like Pete and Greg are like that as well. Really knowing your neighborhood. Where I live, I actually live in the Fort Hunt area of Alexandria, which is Fairfax County, just a little south of Old Town. And it used to be, there's a road where houses on one side are like literally almost 100,000 more than houses on the other side of this road, for whatever reason. But things have shifted a little bit. And really the value is, don't think you have to buy on this side of the road. The other side of the road is just as nice, just as good. You're going to enjoy it. The houses are, beneficial in this way. And I think sometimes people here, and in my area, we do get a lot of military because we're near Fort Belvoir, Pentagon, all of that. People talk and they hear about certain neighborhoods that they feel they have to get into. But once you start showing them some alternatives, that's actually same basic area, local kids sports, it's all integrated, the schools all, get integrated, whatever. They can actually get more for their money sometimes, and just the same great experience, the same, a great neighborhood. It just, for whatever reason, it's less than the one on the other side of the road, so to speak. So that's another example of, the value that real estate agents bring to the table to help their clients.
Well, that's a very historic area. And, I've done a lot of podcasts on some of the history of Fairfax County. And, we did not have a high school in Fairfax County for Black students until 1954. So Black students had to go to Manassas, or if they're rich enough, they can go to DC public schools. So, but there were no high schools, but there were historical Black neighborhoods. And one of them, of course, on Quandah Road and a lot of the areas in Mount Vernon and Groveton. So they have a long history. It's up and down. Sometimes the history wasn't always that friendly, but I think those things are still evolving. And I think, like, for example, Mount Vernon High School, if you pick up a yearbook of 1964, 65, it looks like the most upscale type of area you'd ever see. Same yearbook 15 years later, it looks like you're in an urban area. And it's just, and I think those areas are still very much in flux. It's kind of exciting. And I think if you're, from a real estate point of view, I think there's a lot of opportunity in those. Even in Arlington, we used to live right north of 50 on Fillmore. in Lion Park. If you went right below Route 50 in South Arlington, the values went down $200,000. I mean, you could throw a rock across 50 and you're right there. But that's actually severely narrowed, even though Wakefield's not quite as good a school as Washington Lee or Washington Liberty and Yorktown. Anyway, I digress. Anyone else want to jump in here about neighborhoods and stuff? No. So Greg, when people come to you, and you've really killed it in Belmont over the years, do you think Belmont? You get buyers that come to you that you feel like you probably wouldn't like it here. You don't golf, or some of the amenities and some of the other plant communities might actually fit you more, or is Belmont the kind of place there's a little something there for everybody?
No, I wouldn't say so. In fact, back when I was selling new homes for Toll Brothers and selling Belmont from the beginning, I used to use this line on the floor all the time. And I would just say, hey, look, I'm going to tell you everything about this community. And once I've done that, if this feels like a fit for you, then you know what? There's a house in here for everyone. That's how Toll Brothers has designed this community. From attached homes to detached homes, from this price range to that price range, there's something in here for everybody. But this community is not for everyone. And if you just feel like, this community is not right for me, there's a lot of great communities in this area. And, to both Kathy and Pete's point, this is where an agent really earns their stripes, is understanding what the buyer is looking for, understanding what their short-term and their long-term goals are. Long-term goals, you mentioned North Arlington versus South Arlington. If somebody, came to, one of us back in the day and said, hey, I'm looking for something that I think's got a lot of upside. You might have given them the advice of, hey, South Arlington, someday, man, it's going to be just as well as desired as North Arlington. It's just going to take a little time. And, if your client said, hey, I've got time, I'm just looking for upside. So this is where, agents, spend time with their clients up front, trying to understand, what's important to them. Is it lifestyle? Is it privacy? Is it, upside on appreciation? Is it something that they can rent out, in the short term after they moved on to something else? I mean, and then based on what we find out about them, then we use our local knowledge to find these, hidden gems, or at least guide them into the right community. And we realize that, not every community is right for every person, for sure. And there's different price points in every community, and we have to, look at that as well.
Yeah. So, any other hidden gems out there, guys? Well, we're in an election year, and without getting political, I would imagine there's a little bit of uncertainty in my industry. I sell to law firms, e-discovery, Kathy, and a lot of times the big deals get put on hold right before the election, but it could work in either way. Other than that, I mean, sometimes if you think the administration is going to change, you may be more willing to do a deal because there might be opportunities on the other side, or vice versa. What about real estate? How is the election year? We have so many other things going on right now, like interest rates and stuff that are affecting your jobs. But what about how do elections affect real estate, and not just the election year, but the year after?
I think you said the magic word. It's just uncertainty. Like whenever anyone in real estate is uncertain about anything, things tend to be a little sideways. I think one thing that we benefit from is, be very blunt, it's in November, and that's sort of off season a little bit for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so right around the election, I think that's if the elections were in March or April, we'd probably deal with a lot more volatility. I think the fact that it's in November when less people move, I think that helps. And then I think that given all the other factors that we've talked about with the interest rates and the low inventory, I think real estate will be okay, because there might be a lot of uncertainty, but I think that by the time people get back to it in early 2025, it'll be late January, February when they start thinking about it, and whatever things that have happened in the election will probably, they've had some chance to digest it.
Yeah. Anybody else with any thoughts about the election?
Not really particularly about the election. I mean, this is DC after all. People are transient, they come and go a lot. Military, every year, military gets stationed here and people move out and people move in. So, how the election also will impact the economy, that's the uncertainty, right? Like, got a little of that going on in people's heads. But Washington, DC, it's so
Recession proof.
people always say that it is recession proof because people have to move here and they have to move away a lot. But like, I think back to like Amazon HQ2 or whatever, the headquarters that coming into Alexandria, and how that was just going to shake things up so much and no, it's, yes, it brings in some new home buyers and development and whatnot, but it wasn't the shakeup everybody thought it was going to be. It's, it's a slow drip type of thing. But it's, DC, we're always going to have people coming and going. So, and the economy is going to do what it does, but it's pretty much recession proof. It is. And it's always a good idea to invest in real estate, I think, if you can in this area.
Yeah, I think back when, when we were growing up as kids and DC was really more of a government town, there were bigger shifts in employment around election times, potentially. But now we've become so economically diverse that, as Kathy said, and you said, Julian, we are sort of recession proof here because of our diversity in the different economic sectors that we have here. Government's just a portion of that at this point, instead of the big kid in town.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's great. The last time we talked, I mentioned all the changes that had happened in real estate since my last transaction. With the Zillow, with the stagers, that was new. With the videos that realtors put out, real estate had changed so much. It was so fascinating to me that it's changing. Now we started off the conversation a little bit negative because we're on this uncertainty with the buyers, brokers, and all those things. But have there been new developments that you guys are excited about? Because it seems like things are changing in real estate, which is good. There's always technological advances and things. Have there been things that you guys are excited about, or things that give you optimism when you're training your younger folks up on your team?
I think from my perspective, good social media content. And I think the word content in real estate has, not to sound like an old grouchy guy, but is like a little bit like what content is in real estate. I think what I like seeing is good information that'll help people. And I think realtors, there's some stuff that tends to be more like big production stuff. I think the most valuable stuff and the stuff I like to see the best is just good informative things. And I think that's what I get excited about, where we can do a podcast like this, or put something on social media with our favorite vendors, or give someone, Kathy's done a really good job of bringing good hard numbers. And what I get excited about with social media and new technology things are just, it's a good platform for us to bring more information that people will always use, and they can get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, Pete. I know my social media content, I get the best response from people when I'm putting out like videos or hard information about listings that are available, where people are interested in looking at it. And they just appreciate being able to see a quick clip of an interesting house in Old Town or something like that. So people do appreciate that information. And also just the connections that we can make, like Julian and I reconnecting after many years of, not being in touch or whatever. It's just social media is just a great way to reach out to people, to make people aware of what I'm doing and what's on the market. And, you know, they can use that information for what they want to use it for. Or I just find it opens up a lot more conversations and starts conversations between people from what they've seen on social media. Yeah, so you know, use it in a positive way. I mean, it's funny you say when we're training up the younger people, it's like they're training us, really. That's what the 80s, right? So what
Yeah,
you know, hey, help me with this, help me with that. But anyway, it's all good. We all use it in slightly different ways, and hopefully to the advantage of homeowners and people who are looking. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great, Kathy.
It's a good way to also, it's free advertise. Like one great example that we try to use is when you list someone's house, everyone on social media is seeing, you know, how does Greg present a listing? How does Kathy present a listing? How does Pete present a listing? It's a good way to sort of show other people through one listing, hey, this is how we do things. This is how professional we like to be. This is how we like to make the house look as good as it can, so we get the most, you know, the biggest buyer pool. And so social media is definitely helping in terms of that, because your bandwidth just goes up 100 times.
That's interesting because I think a long time ago, like in, you know, in the 80s when my parents may have bought a house, you would look for maybe realtors whose name were on a lot of signs in front of houses, or people that you knew really well. But now you really do get a chance to see a realtor in action because of social media. You get to kind of see how, you know, they present themselves. You get to see their personality in the videos often themselves. So that is a good way to. Well, I think last time someone said the first showing is the video. The first showing or the pictures online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the first chance for the realtor to kind of show off or to audition is actually in the videos that you guys do.
Younger agents do a really good job of that. You know, they're out there and they're getting a lot of exposure, you know, that they wouldn't have in, you know, because of social media. And I think overall, I think it's a good thing. And I just really, that's why I follow so many realtors on social media, is because, you know, I want to get ideas about how other people are, you know, doing it in a good professional manner.
Yeah.
I think I'll give you a little bit of a 180 on this discussion point here. You know, I think one thing that we're seeing right now in the realtor community, with as tight as the market has been in the last few years, and now this upcoming change in the industry that we're going to be dealing with, is you're seeing a lot of the less than serious, I'll call them, real estate agents just get out of the business, and that's always a healthy thing for the market, because, you know, when the market's good, people get their real estate licenses thinking that there's going to be easy money out there, and you know, when the market gets tight, and you've heard some of the stories that, you know, we've shared today, it is so crucial to have an experienced agent that knows how to navigate the buyer side of a transaction, or even the seller side of the transaction. I mean, you know, a lot of times in today's market, people think that they can cut corners on the listing side of things because, you know, there's low inventory out there, and, you know, I don't have to do the prep work. I don't have to get it, you know, to get it ready. And a lot of times that backfires. In fact, you know, I've shown a home in Leesburg recently a couple of times to two different buyers, and quite honestly, the prep work that was done on that home just wasn't done correctly. You know, they did a little bit, but not enough, and now they're paying for it. You know, I've seen 2 price reductions on that home. We're probably going to see more. And, you know, so the advice that you get and the guidance that you get in this business, whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side, you know, it's really crucial. You know, and in tough markets, you see the cream, you know, kind of rise to the top, because people understand how important it is to have the best representation that they can get.
I think
That's-
to piggyback, good, Kathy,
Yeah.
go.
No, you first. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Greg, the people getting out of the business. I think that's one thing about the NAR. A lot of Julian, you probably know this, but a lot of Zillow, Realtor.com, they provide leads for agents. So a lot of agents that are new will buy those leads in order to get business. And now with the buyer situation being a lot murkier, I think a lot of those agents won't get those leads, and or if they are getting the leads, they'll be less effective. So that'll be a little bit more attrition with agents, eventually maybe having a little more motivation to get out of the business because they don't have those leads coming in that are as plentiful or as effective.
Yeah,
Kathy?
I always thought that was a little bit manipulative when they provide that agent name in Zillow. If you didn't know better and you were kind of an unsophisticated buyer, you may think, well, that's the person I'm supposed to contact if I want to go through with this transaction. So I always thought that was a little bit interesting.
It's a dysfunction.
What's that?
We have our fair share of dysfunctions in the real estate industry, and that's one because the challenge there is just like you're talking about. You could see a Zillow listing, and most consumers think they're going to the listing agent. And what's a little scary is they're going to someone who probably doesn't know anything about that particular home,
Mhm.
because it's like more of a rotation thing.
Yeah.
So they call that person and they expect to be getting all the information on the property, and they're getting someone who probably, has to do some catch up about that particular home.
Yeah. I mean, the strategic points that a realtor gets involved in are just massive because when you're making these decisions, you don't do this very often. And if you don't rely on someone to help you with that, and I know that I guess the argument is we pay some of the highest realtor fees in the world, which I guess is the basis of some of this stuff that we're hearing now. But the money is dwarfed if you're not getting good value. I know Greg had mentioned on the earlier call that we did that you really want to maximize. You want to leave money on the table. So if you save that 1% or 2%, whatever it is, and that could be cost you a lot of money if you left it on the table. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a middle ground, but I think good representation is something that no one wants to go without. So that's for sure.
All right, Julian, well, if you want a job marketing real estate agents, you're hired.
Okay. Well, look, I don't know if you guys, I want to say, I think you guys are amazing. I really enjoyed this. I don't know if you guys wanted to, you can spend a minute or so just kind of telling folks where to find you, some of the things that you're doing and what makes you a little bit different. If you get a chance to do a little 1-minute pitch if you want. So Kathy, if you want to start?
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, where you can contact me, you can look me up on kathy.hassett.com. And I'm with Compass in Old Town Alexandria, although I do transactions all over Northern Virginia, from Fauquier County down to Prince William County, down to Stafford County. And I represent both buyers and sellers. So yeah, reach out to me. Anything else?
And they no longer call you. You don't do any settlement title stuff anymore. They don't.
No, so I'm a former settlement attorney. So when I first graduated from law school, that was my first legal job was I did residential real estate settlements. And then from there I went into title work. So I have a good working knowledge of all that. I also am a former divorce attorney, so I do handle divorce, in divorce situations, a lot of times they have to sell the house, and that is kind of a unique situation. And I also work with estate attorneys. Just my last transaction was with an estate attorney. It's just a little bit different. So anyway, but I handle all types of transactions, love working with both buyers and sellers. And yeah, reach out if you think you'd like to talk about it.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Well,
thanks for having me, Julian. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it was so great to see you. Maybe one of these days I can see you in person.
That'd be great.
Well, great. Well, why don't you go next? We know you as the king of Belmont, but I obviously I've seen you have listings all around Loudoun and in Fairfax. So why don't you just give your 1-minute pitch and where folks can find you.
Yeah, so when people ask me where I work, I typically say Eastern Loudoun and with a little bit of Western Fairfax and a little bit of Western Loudoun sprinkled on top of that. I've always come from a perspective of being an expert in a small area as opposed to a novice in a large area. So even though I grew up in Fairfax, I don't study that market. So I tend to, keep my business in a pretty tight radius and in areas that I really know well. Um, and so, buyers and sellers, I handle both of them now. I downsized my team a few years ago, so I don't have a whole bunch of buyers agents running around there helping people. I'm back out on the streets, just like doing it myself, and that's what I love to do. And the real gratifying thing recently has been how many first-time buyers I've been helping that are kids of some of my past clients.
Isn't that great?
There's a lot of satisfaction in helping a buyer get their first home, you know. And as we've heard earlier on in the call, there's a lot of skill involved in trying to get a contract through a multiple offer environment that we're in. So that's been a lot of fun for me lately. My bread and butter has always been sort of like the luxury properties on the listing side of things, and I still love that as well. I enjoy the marketing, the high-end approach to how we represent properties and how we prepare them has been our calling card for years, and still I think reaps benefits. In today's market, you can put a home on the market that isn't completely ready and probably still get an offer. But can you get 10 offers? Can you get the price up 10%? And that's the key on the listing side of things is can you do it right and then really max out the ROI. So that's my my specialty. I really enjoy the business, and I'm glad to be back, directly working with buyers and sellers on a daily basis.
Well, Greg, we know we're both in trouble when you get a grandson or granddaughter of a client. That's when we've gotten old. And I wanted to ask you, if they're only building single family homes on the western part of the county, like Purcellville, do you see yourself having to venture out to Berryville? Somebody, if they're not going to build single family houses on the eastern, do you see yourself doing more western stuff in the future?
Occasionally you might find that. So yeah, I don't think that's going to be a real regular thing for me. But if the buyers want to head that direction, and it makes sense, I wouldn't certainly go to Winchester or Fauquier County or anything like that. That to me just doesn't make sense. And I don't feel like I can, give great service in those areas like I can, in areas that I really, really know well. But yeah, as prices go up and as land becomes more and more scarce, people are going further away from the city, whether it's, West in Virginia or West Virginia or, Southwest down 66 towards Front Royal, or, people are starting to go a little bit further to get, single family.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Greg. Thanks again for doing this. Pete, what about you? I've heard a lot of your pitch over the years, but what are some of the things that you like to talk to folks about and how you guys are different?
I think I'm really proud of the fact that we're probably 95% referral, where we don't have signs on buses and stuff like that. We basically go by the fact of from start to finish, we're there, as you saw, 24/7 for our clients all the time. And I think that having been in that litigation support business that you're familiar with, I was always dealing with attorneys and paralegals, and I just got used to having to get back to people right away and being available 24/7. So when I transitioned to real estate, unknowingly, I just sort of took that same mentality to real estate. And I think that's what really sets us apart is we just, once we're working with someone, we're texting them constantly. And I've heard some agents say, if it's after 6 o'clock, I'll call you, tomorrow morning on their voicemails. And I love hearing that because that's my competition, and that's my team's competition, where real estate happens 24/7. And we take a lot of pride in local knowledge, service. And basically the easiest thing I tell to people is say, take everything else out of play. I'm going to give you advice based on as if it was my money and I was in your situation. And that's the easiest way to give the cleanest, best advice that we can. So you can see us online at peterknapprealtygroup.com. Like Greg, I took a swing at having a bigger team. And I think I've known Greg for quite some time and looked up to him a lot. And we're very like-minded in how we do things. And I just didn't like the lack of control I got when more people started operating. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me, because if someone's on the Peter Knapp Realty Group, they have to have the same values that I do and everyone else has on the team does. And as you get bigger, I just found it kind of hard to keep things in control and getting the way that I'd like them to go. So focus wise, I grew up in Reston. I've done transactions all over Northern Virginia, but what I've learned in 17 years is I can help someone buy or sell a house anywhere. But like Greg said, I've been in Loudoun County, I've been in Lansdowne for 17 years. When you live close to where you're selling, you really do know everything that's going on. And most of my business tends to gravitate towards that. But you are a good friend, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. These are fun.
Oh yeah, it was great. I appreciate you guys doing that. Last time Mike was on, and as you got, Mike's more in a corporate outfit, and I was thinking about what you and Greg said about keeping your team small and your values. You could tell that you guys are very passionate about what you do, because you really have to be when you're so client facing. When it's more corporate, and the more you can leverage, you can make some money, but it's run efficiently, but you have to have the passion for it if you're going to be on the ground floor with a smaller team. And I think clients can feel that. I mean, obviously there's many great ways to provide service, but one thing for sure is if you have a small team, you have to provide kind of the enthusiastic service, and I think your clients can feel that. So,
yeah.
But anyway, guys, it's been great. I really appreciate you doing this, and hopefully next time we talk, interest rates have gone down, and it's a whole different story next time. So, but anyway, guys, thanks again for doing it.
This is really enjoyable. Nice seeing you, Greg.
Hey, good to see you, Pete. It's never a dull moment in our business, Julian. It's always a pleasure to be on with you.
I appreciate it, Greg. You're a great professional, man. Thanks for taking time.
All right, guys.
Take care.
Take care.